Hello everyone, AI engineer reporting for duty. No, but in seriousness, hi and welcome. This is the Intrepid ship, which I have aptly named Error 404, and I thought I would do just a little tutorial kind of video, and I primarily play as an engineer. I've only had this game maybe 5 days or so. So it's not so much going to be a tutorial, more as I'm trying to teach myself how to play engineer efficiently. So I'll come over here, and on the Intrepid, this is where the engineering section is. Now, the engineering section is quite interesting to me, because there's a lot of things you can do here, and there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. So obviously, when you start up as an engineer, you want to juggle the power. That's the best way I can think of putting it. So you want to make sure at all times that your core temperature does not reach all the way into the red, which will be up here. When I say red, I just mean hot shit. You want to try and keep it stable at the lower end. Meanwhile, you want to make sure that all the systems get enough power to them to be able to work and function correctly. So what I will first tell you about is these options on the auxiliary reactor configuration. You have the atrium healing, which most of the time you will be able to turn this off, and this will give you plus 400, which is really nice, actually. Then you have your oxygen generation, which is your basic life support. Most of the time you'll want to leave this on, usually. Then you have climate control, which I think it's not currently implemented. I am not 100% aware on that, but when it is implemented, this will be controlling the humidity inside the ship. So for now, we just switch this off because it has no function anyway. Gives you 400 power. You might as well leave it off, right? Now your spotlights, I believe this is for the scientist and the sensors of the actual ship. This is also okay to turn off most of the time. I am not 100% sure if this is correct, but sometimes when the scientist wants to do a scan, I turn this back on. Now, I'm not sure if it actually does help or not. I might need confirmation on that, but I do turn it back on for the scientist. But most of the time, again, I have this off. Now, your projectile aim assist. This is something you want on when you're in combat, of course. You don't need this when you're traveling around. But when I have entered into games, and when I first come over to the reactor screen, the first thing I tend to do is turn this off. Now the weapons specialist gets quite mad at me for that, and I will explain some things why I do it in a moment. Let's move on. Cyber defense. This is to protect your ship from viruses. And again, when in combat, I turn this off, which also gets me in bother. Interior light speaks for itself. It just toggles the lights on and off. I leave this on most of the time because people hate being in the darkness. For me, it doesn't really bother me. The screens are light enough, I can see. We have a flashlight. But people generally prefer it to be on. The final one, missile lock-on. Well, this is for the missiles that the weapons specialist wants to fire. Again, I usually turn this off when we're traveling. Now, I have a reason for doing this, and this is just my personal preference, my method that I like to play sometimes, which isn't particularly popular with random people that I find. Now, I'm going to come down here and go into the life support, and we're going to put the exosuit on. Now, the exosuit regulates your temperature and has an oxygen supply, which for the moment I believe is unlimited. I wonder if they're going to change that. But now, you might think, with all these systems down, we're not in combat. Why do we need this much power? Now, personally, I don't do it for the power. But when I do this, it's not all the time, but say we've been in a bit of bad shape, the hull might be quite damaged. I like to turn off absolutely everything. Now it gets a bit creepy in here, doesn't it? You can watch the oxygen in the top left going out. And then I will give full power to engineering, full power to science lab. You can completely remove weapons. I tend to keep shields up quite high as well. And at this point, I would initiate the jump prep. The captain will announce that we should initiate the jump. We will do that. It will charge the warp drive. Let me just do this. And you will see that this right now, it's quite a decent speed. We haven't got any upgrades on the ship or anything like that. So it is using the pure power of engineering and the science lab to charge. So as you can see, align ship to target. Well, we're not going to do that right now. Let me explain this screen a little bit more. Again, this is for the engines. You generally want this to be quite high. Maybe not as high as I've put it here, but when I do this kind of setup, I will just put it max because we have a lot of power. It doesn't really matter. The stability will be fine. Also, the science lab will make the warp drive go faster. The engineering as well, but I think it's mostly the science drive. And again, the shields keep high just in case we get attacked. Weapons when we're traveling we don't need. However, this might get you in trouble if you do this. Because often I have the weapon specialist complaining he can't recharge his weapon fast enough. But I think if you make sure that the weapon is already charged and move it down, I think it stays charged. Again, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a weapon specialist. Should you come into combat, you will want to immediately move it up, and then immediately turn these on. This as well, but these are most important. Everything else comes a bit after, so then you'll have your cyber defense turned on. This screen as well is really easy to explain. You've got your oxygen, your shield, and then your reactor. As you can see, they're all fine, not taking any damage. Your coolant reserves. Now this is where it gets interesting. So then you'll make this big run into the engineering room. So over here you've got these screens again, which is good. This is where you'll be during combat. Don't bother staying at the bridge. You want to be down here because this is where the juggling action happens. Say, for example, you haven't put a suit on, but you need more power. You can turn the oxygen generator off. That's fine. You're not going to suffocate straight away. But you want to keep an eye on the top left, and you want to keep an eye on everyone to make sure that they are able to handle the lack of oxygen. And again, you'll want to juggle it between making sure the reactor has low temperature. And this is where this comes in handy. Now, if you're using energy when fighting, you definitely will, your reactor will start to become unstable. And if you have a lower temperature but it's starting to build, you might want to switch it to low. This will maintain the temperature of your reactor. So that's a really nice function, and you can see it goes down, but it's not too fast. It's nice. Now say you're over here around this part. This is where I start pumping the coolant reserves on high. Now you can also, cut the power to this stuff. You might not need the science lab so much anymore. Shields you want to keep up. Weapons, again, you want to keep up. But another thing that I find useful is if you're, pretty stationary, you don't really need the pilot to move around that much. You can turn this down as well. So immediately you'll not be using as much power, which is great. But say, you've got quite high up and you're having a panic, like I sometimes do. I will juggle the oxygen, so the oxygen will go off. I'll be putting this on high. I will be loading capsules for the scientists very quickly. Viruses require fuel capsules, and then I'll quickly come over here. I'll make the most annoying sound in the game. I will cool down the reactor by shooting the fire extinguisher at it, and it actually works, which is really nice. It doesn't do too much, but if you're dangerously high, your entire crew can come down here and shoot at this, and it will lower the temperature really fast. So you have these 3 switches right here. You've got this will turn off all the power to the whole ship. And this switch, I believe, it turns off access to all your systems right here. So not the whole ship, just the screens. So there's a very specific path you have to follow here. It's really easy because it tells you on the screen. You pull the first lever and then you boot the ship operating system. Once that's done, you pull the second lever. And then you want to prime the warp core. And once that's done, you can put your shields on. System's active, everything's good to go. And that's fantastic. Now there is one more, actually there's two more things to address. This is the salvage screen. Now I'm still trying to get used to the salvaging, knowing what things are best for the ship, what things might cost to sell. I'm not 100% on everything so far, but you can salvage a ship once you've claimed it. This screen is what you will use to do it. So it will have the item appear, and then just below it'll show the percentage you have of extracting it, and then the button to extract. Now, I think the maximum percentage you can have is 70%. Generally, the players will agree you should go for these items first, but the lower your percentage of extraction gets, obviously you're gonna fail. And if you fail at extracting, you lose the ship, you don't get any scraps, because it just blows up. You don't get anything. There's one final thing you might want to know about engineering. Well, it's pretty important, actually. Say you've done everything you can, try as you may, but the reactor is, it's all the way up here, it's overheating like crazy. I've never actually seen this happen. I've never had to do this myself. It is what I've read in the manual, pretty much. So you'll want to eject your reactor core. Doing this is extremely, last case scenario. So what you will want to do is turn everything off. Absolutely everything, even your life support. That has to go. You'll eject this warp core, run all the way to the bridge, jump in the pilot's seat. Well, your pilot will be doing that, I imagine, and you will just go. You will leave. Core's ejected, get out of there. Because you don't have a particularly big time frame to get out of range of the blast once the core is ejected, because it will blow up. But once that is done, there is not a lot more you can do. Once your energy is gone, all you can really do then is set this distress signal, turn it on, and you will pray. Alright, that's the best I got from my first tutorial, guys. I'm not a pro engineer by any standards. This is just the kind of gameplay that I tend to do. I make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. It's part of learning. Mistakes are fine. There is one other thing here, is the captain can unlock this, and you can blind jump. However, if you blind jump like this, you don't know what's gonna happen. That is what I can say. You might end up somewhere and blow up your ship. Let's find out what happens. 3, 2, 1. And I hope to see you next time. May you fare well, traveler.